and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
I'm attorney Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt.
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake.
YT Production.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy, you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State?
I hear you, Mike. Back in the studio. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop.
Yes, sir.
Man, it looks like the pockets are empty. Y'all Christmas gone, got all your little money, man. Can you see anymore? Boy, I tell you, all money spent, all good money. I know. Share some of the wealth with the people out there, man. Yeah, share something, man.
Man, I tell you what, my pocket's empty between all the cousins, nieces, nephews, aunties, and for you the grammatical hounds, yes, I did said aunties that want some. Man, they got my pockets so empty. Then I got that cousin that you never hear from talking about, let me get 10 on it. Man, I ain't got nothing for you, man. Sorry.
You got lip pockets for everybody out there.
Exactly.
You got a lump of coal, or what you doing? You sharing some love? What's the issue over there on your side of the neighborhood for Christmas?
Man, I'm just getting back from a fishing trip. Friend of mine got married, wanted to go a bachelor trip, so we went deep sea fishing.
Nice.
Out in the Caribbean. Nice little vacation. I wanted to turn it down because of all this work, but sorry, I couldn't. So I was like, look here, man, let's go some deep sea fishing. Caught some yellow striped Maui. What is it? I just that name escapes me, but I know they were about 2.5 feet long. So
ooh, yeah. All you need to know, you'll get it for the end of the show.
Hey, Mike, you was out in the Caribbean fishing, huh? Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, I would leave that alone. I know I better have me a bottle of white Hennessy though.
Man, see, funny thing about that, they are. I don't know
Funny
what
thing
the shortage.
about that.
The shortage is. I don't know what the shortage is. There is literally none in the airports, none on the shelves. And then to make it off, my wife went with a group of friends to Cancun, and I asked them, bring some white hen. They said the same thing, that the shelves were empty, that there's a shortage of white Hennessy somewhere.
Welcome to 2020.
The only reason I'm gonna let you off the hook for that, because I know my sister would not lie to you, so I believe that is true. With that, Charles,
so you're gonna believe her and not me. Is that how it is?
Got for the people.
Say that again, Dr. Cavil.
Let's say you got lint in your pockets, a pocket full of coal. What you got for the people this Christmas holiday?
I got plenty of lint. I'm done shopping, done, nice and done.
Man, I'm through with y'all, man. But if we can bring some Christmas cheer, holiday cheer for all those in terms of whatever you celebrate, we're here for the people. Welcome to episode 97 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora. All things HBCU sports for the institutions large and small. From NAIA to NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our K-Switch 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, none other than Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Here we go. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THE Agency LLC. THE Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Today's show will be one that we will do a review. No interviews, it's just us and the listeners and the followers. So we're going to encourage you to get in the mix. We're going to call you out and get your information out there a little more than normal, if you would, in terms of hoping that you're having a great holiday break. If you started it, I know some of y'all have to stay in the game a little longer than others, and certainly for those on the front line in so many different ways, we appreciate what you do, and we're going to celebrate you as well. But let me jump in here before I throw it back to Charles to give us some HBCU news of the day, and then we'll share it with Mike and see what he's going to bring to the table other than the deep sea fishing and his stories that he doesn't have any liquid consumption for the team. But that's of a different manner. I want to make sure that there's still love on this. And, you know, that's Big Brother Mike, so you got to be careful. Even though we are a part of a fraternity that is a non-hazing organization, I know the other side of Mike. And while I have the ability to turn off the mic, he has the ability to control some other things. So I'm not. Willie Addison says, good evening, everyone. Here for the weekly HBCU lecture. Yes, we're going to mix it into that lecture. We're going to go into that short 3-week break lecture so you can get your grades in and make that quantum leap. Richmond, Virginia, that means CIAA country is in the house. Kay Johnson, one of the top followers we have, always bright. She says, Merry Christmas, HBCU Sports Lab.
Merry Christmas, definitely.
Doubt about it. Might even give some final grades. It'll be on the athletic departments, not athletic programs, since there really weren't sports played this fall. But we can talk about athletic departments overall in terms of who's getting it right and who may need to repeat the class. Hello, Willis Alex Hines says Merry Christmas to each other as they chatting it up. I like it when they talk to each other in the chat sessions. Keep it going, share, and get it out there. Don Johnson. Lonnie Shaw, that means A&T is in the house. I'm on board. Yes, sir. Chunk Hunt from Monroe, Louisiana, doing what he does. Clarence Tillman III, Daryl Terrell, Kay Johnson, Chuck Hunt, Robin Gordon, getting out there, getting it done. Gerald Wolfolk, checking us out. Thomas White Jr., Mogul Threads. I got Mogul Threads on assignment, man. We're getting ready to produce some clothing lines. We're going to bring it out. We're going to give it to the team first, but then we're going to put it out there for the viewers that want to sport. Some of the lab products, you know where to get it, are looking right. Ricky Burton, Grand Fan, checking in. None other than Grand Fan, getting ready to do it. Kendrick D. Callis, I see you in the house. Callis, Prairie View A&M University, getting it done. Jarvis Austin, William B.J. Levette II. Boy, that's nice. Tony William B.J. Levette said, A.D. Drew, the year of the churn. Yeah, a lot of churn.
Yes, indeed.
And the churn is happening. Wendy Jenkins Bishop is checking us out. Thank you, Wendy. Lawrence D. White is doing what he does. Franklin Nelson, Merry Christmas, Mike, Charles, and Doc. Herbert Bolden, as I said, Doc and Company. Kendrick Callis says, PV in the house. Yes. Matthew Bradford. Talking about D.
There you go.
I love in the house. I see you,
frat brother there.
Representing the Jackson State. That's your frat brother?
That's frat brother.
Our frat brother. All right, then.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, our frat brother. like,
well, you know, Charles, he
don't hold the love. Don't be stingy over there.
Jackson State going on right now. You know,
he got. I mean, that Dion done went to his head. He got to. This is our stuff.
Just for that, I'm going to Mike first since he gonna hold us. Mike, what news of the days you got, man? I don't know what's going on between you and Charles. I have no friends.
Yeah, I got something for you. I just want you to listen. I just want you to listen real closely. Hey, Charles, what was that? I'm sorry. That was that band.
It sounded like a marching storm over there.
That was that marching storm.
Man, it sounds like you ready for some 1876 sports and culture, man.
That's right. 1876 sports and culture coming at you at a podcast near you starting January of the year our Lord 20 and 21. 2021. I still got my Spanish, y'all. But on the real, Doc asked me for some news. So getting back, I was playing catch up. The first thing that caught my eye was the North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T will agree to play together for the next 10 years, keeping the rivalry real. To me, that's really important. I know it. I think the announcement came out like last Thursday, Friday. And then, so they've signed a 10-year deal to keep it going through 2030. So with North Carolina A&T announcing its departure from the MEAC starting in the fall of 2021, questions kind of came up about, will the rivalry continue once the Aggies are competing in the Big South? But now, you know, you have statements from the North Carolina Central Athletics Director, Dr. Ingrid Wicker McCree. And you also have a statement from the North Carolina A&T Director of Athletics, Earl Hilton. So in support, and I won't read it verbatim. Some of you have seen it on social media, but I think it's really important to keep that rivalry going despite the conference alliances. That may change in the interim, so I thought that was really important. So that's my initial news of the day, despite that beautiful band that you just heard at the onset about 3 or 4 minutes ago. So.
No doubt about it, man. I like that. As you talking about that is going to be interesting in terms of them being able to continue the rivalry. Now it's going to be an intersectional, intra-conference rivalry in terms of that Big South, MEAC. So it'll be interesting to see who's going to get the best of each other in that matchup. You know, the rivalry is still going to be intense. That's not going to change. It just takes it down from the standpoint that the game will not have conference titles on the line, which it has over the last couple of years, which has been right. But it may have some other indications in terms of for A&T in terms of the playoffs, FCS. It may have some seeding implications or well, they're able to get in the playoffs. And then obviously the recruiting rights on both sides are going to be fascinating in terms of what that looks like. So those are some things that I think are interesting with that. With that, Charles, what are some other news that you have going on?
Sure thing. Let me get into the SWAC basketball players of the week, and shout out to Andrew Roberts, who's the assistant commissioner for media relations, for getting that information out for us so we can have it here on a Tuesday. But Alabama A&M Jalen Johnson, he was named the SWAC Men's Basketball Player of the Week for this past week, December 15th through the 21st. Johnson, he's from Indianapolis, Indiana. He delivered an outstanding home opening performance as the Bulldogs upset number 16 mid-major South Alabama 93-90 in double overtime this past Saturday, December 19th. In a career high 42 minutes of play, Johnson scored 24 points on 10 of 16 shooting, and also tallied a double-double with 11 rebounds. He was able to contribute defensively, also adding 3 steals and a block shot for the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. So shout out to Jalen Johnson for becoming SWAC's Men's Basketball Player of the Week this past week.
So certainly, we'll get a chance maybe to take a deeper dive in that matchup. I got to follow it on the ESPN notes, as they do with the game day notes. It was not shown on television. They really put it on in that game. The Bulldogs really stood out. 14-point halftime lead. They let it slip away. They had a 10, 11-point lead going into the end of the game and let it slip away, but they end up winning in double overtime, as you talked about. So that's fascinating. But before I throw it back to Mike to see about some other news, as we continue to break it down for the week, news of the week this week, let me jump back. And Reginald Johnson says, D, I love. Got that black and old gold in the picture there. Dexter L. Lee, checking us out.
Professor Lee. That's our frat brother as well.
Man, all right, Alpha's in the house.
And his name,
appreciate it, because you back on the team now.
He's Professor Lee, Dr. Lee.
Yeah.
Dr. Lee.
Fred Whitted is in the house of Winston-Salem State out of the CIAA HBCU Heritage Center. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. HBCU Heritage Center putting in work. Burtis Wilson, Texas Southern University over there, JHJ School of Business putting in. Joe Clay says 1876 Sports and Culture Podcast on podcast platform starting January 5th, 2021, as you talked about, Mike. He's in the house. Shout out to Joe Clay, another one of our frat brothers. Boy, I tell you, Alphas are representing where everybody at.
Joe Clevius.
Holidays family, no doubt. He's out of CIAA country. Prairie A&M band has truly grown. Yes, Dwight Moore, years of the Lord. All righty. Somebody like that. Wendy says, Merry Christmas. Kay wishing you the best this holiday. Oh, she got the hearts in her pink and green in the house. Alpha Sorority Incorporated. No doubt about it. William B.J. Levette says, A&T will play North Carolina Central in every sport. Nice.
Nice.
Kevin Martindale, going back to the yard and different things like that. Kevin Martindale says, happy holidays, bringing in here. Quentin Henry. Vertus says, happy holidays to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab family. You guys have a great show this year. Looking forward to next year. Happy holidays. Yes, indeed. And he got all the sporting balls out there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty clever. I like that. Willie Alexander says, Aggie Eagle Classic, one of the most fierce rivals in HBCU football, no doubt about it. I agree with that. LaShawn Harris, jump in here with a couple of more. Dexter Lee puts out the frat sign, just letting everybody know. Ralph Cooper is making sure that we in the mix, as we said, in the studio, that Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper, bringing it hard and heavy. Willie Alexander says, could Alabama A&M be a SWAC sleeper? I'll think about it a little more. They are 2-0. They only played 2 games, so you can only win what you played, and they've got the W in terms of that, and the big state wins in terms of that, what that is. So I thought that was interesting. Let me go back to Mike. Any other news that you want to share today?
Yeah, just want to revisit a story that we've talked about earlier. Mackenzie Scott. She is on a mission. She just recently gave the Prairie View A&M University, aka The Hill, a sum total of $50 million. But that's not it. Wait, there's more. She's given away a total of $384 million total. So if you sum total all the money she's given what, $4.2 billion to 384 organizations. You look at the list of HBCUs she's given to. So, Prairie View A&M, 50 million, Morgan State, 40 million, Norfolk State, 40 million, Virginia State University, 30 million, Winston-Salem State University, 30 million. Bowie State, 25 million. Claflin, 20 million. Lincoln, PA, y'all, 20 million. Elizabeth State University, 15 million. Dillard University, 5 million. And then of the 6 CIAA members that received a total of 140 million for each. And it was the largest gift from a single donor in the history of their respective institution. It was also the largest single gift or largest gift from a donor in Prairie View A&M's 144-year history. So big contribution. Now, she is estimated to have received close to 58 to 60 billion when she and Jeff Bezos parted ways, but it has been no limit to her giving. She does have a connection to Dr. Ruth Simmons. Her connection, her mentor was Toni Morrison. So that is the mutual connection between her and Dr. Simmons. So interesting, the connection. So you have to wonder if Toni Morrison had some influence, or had to have obviously had some influence. And the stickler is she and Dr. Ruth Simmons have been talking for the past year and a half over matters unrelated to Prairie View A&M University. And out of the blue, she donates her most recent gift of 50 million to Prairie View A&M. So big story in the HBCUs, lots of other folks that are giving, but there's none other that's bigger than this. And I think it deserves some re-mentioning.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big stories of the year as we're doing a year-end review. Give you a chance to rank those after I give Charles a chance to share maybe some updated news that he wants to do this week. And then we'll get back in to where we kind of give in those news of the year as we close it out and see what's going on. I like the way that you tied it in there in terms of giving a little bit of that backstory, because everybody hasn't heard that, and even myself, and those connections is very fascinating. Because to your point, Prairie View has gotten the largest amount at $50 million compared to other universities, and that makes some sense in terms of connections and the fact that she works on it all that period of time. Because they said that her organization was very keen in regards to looking at what institutions were doing. There were some key measures that dictated, one, whether they were going to get the money, and then also in terms of the amount of money they would got. There to do that in the relationships is really key. So I'm glad that you kind of shared that with our listeners to understand not only which HBCUs were in line to get the money and why it came down like that in terms of those criteria, but also the relationship in terms of how they certainly help in a lot of ways, probably in terms of the amount as well. So great point. I'll be interested to see what maybe your top 5 events of 2020 in regards to that. Where will you rank that? So I think that's a good one. Let me go to Charles in terms of some more news of the week, and then we'll flip it and talk a little bit about some basketball updates and kind of see about some rankings. And then we'll close on talking about where you rank the big news of the year as we're kind of doing this year in review. And as we're doing this, I would love to get our followers involved. And so you all can talk about what you believe was the biggest story in 2020. And there were a lot of stories in 2020, good, bad, and indifferent. And some of them very early that you might have forgot about just because so much has transpired.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see if some people can dig in the crates and find some things that you'd be like, yeah, that was big, in terms of that we might forget. So I'm interested to see if we can play a little game back and forth with our viewers to get us in there as they continue to share and like the show with that. So let me go to you, Charles, and see if there's any other news that you want to get out in front of before we talk about that going on there.
Sure, and I wanted to mention this. The MEAC has announced its latest Hall of Fame class, which features 3 football legends as well as legends in track and volleyball. So let me name those individuals. Lyman Drummond from South Carolina State is 2012 inducted into the South Carolina State Athletic Hall of Fame, but he was a 5-time MEAC champion in the long jump. He is also a 2-time Olympian. Demetrius Harrison from North Carolina A&T. He is the Aggies' all-time leader in career tackles with 497, which is the second most in the MEAC. He was also a 2-time MEAC Defensive Player of the Year in 1988 and 1989. Rod Milstead from Delaware State. He's one of the most decorated football players in Delaware State history, as he was an offensive lineman for the Hornets from 1988 to 1991, first team All-MEAC selection from 89 to 91. You also have inducted into the MEAC Hall of Fame Alan Suber from Bethune-Cookman. He was 2002 and 2003 MEAC Offensive Player of the Year. He was also a first-team All-MEAC honorary quarterback in 2001, 2002, and 2003. And finally, Lauren McCoy from Bethune-Cookman, 2016 inductee into the Bethune-Cookman Hall of Fame. He recorded 3 20-win seasons in the circles as Bethune-Cookman softball became a MEAC dynasty and made NCAA history in 2005. So kudos to all those former athletes for being inducted into the MEAC Hall of Fame.
Big deal, Big deal in terms of anytime you get in the Hall of Fame, that's a big deal. Mike, you have any thoughts in terms of those going into the MEAC Hall of Fame?
No, none whatsoever. All legends in different aspects. So none. Long overdue, to be honest. But congratulations to all the inductees. So
let's jump in here. I'm gonna go with the women first. Let's get into some basketball. We got basketball going on, and we've been talking about wanting to get into the mix. Like I said, near the end of the show, we'll go back and talk about some of the big events this year. But let's go with this current event as we're on it. It was doing it. Let's get into a little bit of basketball talk. AD from BCSN, Black College Sports Network, dropped their week. They're doing it bi-weekly until the season officially starts. He breaks it down in terms of NAIA, NCAA Division II, and NCAA Division I. So he has a small and large school breakdown for the women. Obviously, this year there is no Division II that's playing, with the big news that came out with SIAC pushing everything back to March. And obviously last weekend we talked about that the CIAA has decided to cancel sports this year based on COVID-19. So with that being said, let's jump in here in terms of this updated poll this week and see what's going on. You have at number 5 is 1 and 2. You have Dillard at 1 and 2. Coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3, Xavier, Louisiana, 2 and 2. And number 2 on the poll ranking, Florida Memorial at 3 and 4. Bringing us to number 1 is none other than the Talladega Tornadoes. The Lady Tornadoes are getting it done as they end up the number 1 team this week in AD poll ranking for the small school division. So give me your thoughts on that. Let me go with you, Charles, in terms of any thoughts in terms of the rankings. Obviously early, not a lot of teams, so you do see some variation there. But what are your thoughts in terms of the poll ranking in essentially week number 2 for AD poll ranking?
Well, like you mentioned, obviously early, but Talladega, their ladies are getting it done early this season in terms of, I think AD got it right in terms of them being number 1 thus far. From what I understand, I haven't had an opportunity to lay eyes on them yet, but they're a very exciting basketball team, and they get up and down the court. So, and they got a couple scores. So, for them to have that number 1 ranking thus far to start this, before we get into January, kudos to Talladega for getting it done.
Yeah, and you're talking about Talladega, they're at a Gold Coast Athletic Conference, but it looks like they're looking at transitioning as they're going into the same conference with Stillman College in terms of what that will mean for the Gold Coast Athletic Conference. It looks like they're going to be in a different disposition in terms of keeping that NAIA automatic bid, needing a minimum of 6 schools. If you remember, somebody might put this as top news of the year, particularly if you're a follower of the Gold Coast Athletic Conference. I think you're thinking it is. Xavier announced earlier, right, that they were moving to the Red River Athletic Conference, talking about that they wanted to be closer to what they felt were their fan base, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, into that Texas market versus staying in Louisiana and over east of Mississippi, playing in the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. Obviously, it's been out there pretty clearly that Edward Waters looks like that they're transitioning NCAA Division II as they continue to move forward with their move. They're currently in the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. They've already have an invite from the president side of the SIAC. They just have to go through the formal transition of the NCAA Division II, which takes about a 3-year period, and it looks like they're in the first or second year process of that. So that only leaves, with the announcement that seems to be coming out with Talladega, that only leaves 4 institutions in the Gold Coast Athletic Conference with Tougaloo, Philander Smith, Dillard, to talk about those programs over there. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like in that capacity. Let's jump over and get your thoughts in terms of the top 5 teams, Mike. But I want to jump forward and get into the large division. I'll come back and see if Charles has any comments on that. Top 5 teams. You have Delaware State sitting at 1-1 at number 5. At number 4, you have North Carolina A&T sitting there at 1-1. You have Alabama A&M out of the SWAC at number 3, sitting at 1-1. Moving us to number 2 is Howard sitting at 3-1, and then you have Morgan State sitting at 3-0, with sitting at the top of the poll. So let me jump to you, Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of the large side of what AD broke down in terms of BCSN poll ranking for the women's side this week?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to give him 2 stars because not only did he get the small schools pretty well, I think he did pretty good on this one as well. Who was the number 1?
Who was number 1 again?
Who was number 1?
Morgan State, 3-0.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You sound a little reluctant at that, Mike.
Yeah, I was a little bit reluctant between Howard, Morgan, but it's early in the season. So I will give AD this one on that one. I think it's a little early to tell, but I think he's on it with this one.
All right, let me jump to you, Charles. You may have a bit of consternation in terms of something that you want to do a little bone pick with it. What's your concerns there?
I think it's early in the season, but I like Morgan at number 1. I think Alabama A&M, they have a young lady, Dariana Lewis. She's a double machine in terms of what she's able to do. They had a loss to Belmont, but again, she showed up again in that game with another double. But she gives the SWAC big problems. And when we get to conference play, that's going to be one of the names to keep an eye out for. But I think thus far, AD's on top of it in terms of who he has in his top 5. I would have at least listened for Jackson State somewhere in the top 5, but maybe not this week.
Wait for it. It was coming.
There's a lot of MEAC in this. A lot of MEAC. But
there is a lot of MEAC in that. If there's any issue I have, it's a little MEAC heavy, but it's early in the season, and we'll see where he is in week 2 and 3 in January. We'll see where he is.
What is missing out of there? That's no longer in the MEAC. Obviously, is Hampton. Hampton.
Yeah.
Conference playing the Big South. They're a member of the Big South. Obviously, Tennessee State out of OVC. They're new program, new coach, and they're struggling mightily. But I was a little surprised about Hampton. They lost today, so they're 0-2. The way they're doing in the Big South, you're playing back-to-back games against a conference rival, 1 at home and 1 away. So they lost back-to-back games, 2 points. Both of them were close in terms of losing, but they are 0-2. I'm going to cheat a little bit, as I just told you about what Hampton did today in terms on the women's side. You have Howard. Howard has their 4th D1 win. They got a big win over Richmond today. 65-4. They're now sitting at 4-1. So I might would have had them at number 1 regardless, but I'm saying now they certainly have me over Morgan State. Morgan State dropped one just recently as well, which puts them at 3-1. Again, like I said, I'm cheating a little bit, so this poll comes out before that as Morgan lost in terms of them being 3-1. So just updating a little bit. Howard sitting at 4-1, Morgan State at 3-1. The poll was released before those games, and so they could shake it up. But even before that, even at 3-1, I really like what Howard was doing, and so I would have had them at number 1. That's my only bone of contention. Not much when you're hassling over 1 and 2. Like you said, it's still early. I do talk about it. It's a lot of BX in there in that measurement. I guess you have a strength of schedule, and you have the fact that you have 3 of the teams with 500. So you don't have teams in here with losing records, which I certainly can understand. I think that is an important framework for the poll ranking, with a lot of the SWAC schools are playing more games.
Right.
And several of them have Division I wins, but they also have quite a few losses. So that's something to consider when you talk about that too. Jumping in there, before I go back to the BCSN in terms of the men's side, because I want to get into that as well, because that's always fascinating in terms of what goes on there. But I'm going to give our buddy Jimmy some love on the men's side. You know, we have
Jimmy
all the work and recruiting that gives us a little poke, some fun out there. So while the followers are jumping in there and giving us a breakdown in terms of their thoughts, in terms of what's going on here, I am going to certainly make sure we get in there in terms of with Jimmy, give him an update. Let me see what the followers out there talking about and see who else judging them as we give them some love, as I still want them to continue to talk about what are some of the big news of the year in terms of what they're thinking. So we want to give that information there. Jimmy is in there. He talking about, hey, fellas, yeah, we're going to see if you still saying hey after we break that. You gotta be nice and butters up. It's too late now. We got you now. We put you to work. Willie Alexander said Belmont on the men's and women's side is tough. Yeah, they're the best team out there. For those that may not realize in OVC, Belmont is one of those teams that's considered a mid-major program. Yeah. So they're one of the few teams in a one-bid league like the OVC that they have the ability to actually get an at-large bid because of their non-conference schedule and the record that they've had over different competitions over the year. They've kind of elevated themselves in such a way that they get a lot of benefit of doubt. So, Willie, I agree with you quite a bit in terms of your breakdown there. So I want to see. Roy says it's too early on the polls. He's like, wait up and see what's going on there. AD's trying to protect his poll. He didn't say, he didn't jump in and say he only give you 5, but if he had to do 6, 7, and 8, it'd be PV, Ballard, and Jackson State. So he want to make sure that he understands where he going to the SWAC now, so he won't get y'all to put him out too early. So he said, hold on, give him a chance. He wrote it.
Okay.
And so that's what he got there. Morgan State, after that loss, West Virginia Tech Institute will not be number 1 next week. He's so right. He's talking about the men's. In terms of what goes on there. No doubt about that in terms of that West Virginia Tech. I thought that was a really bad loss on the men's side, but we're talking about the women's, and we'll see that. But Roger says SWAC expansion to 12 teams with the addition of FAMU and VC is one of the biggest of the year. No doubt about it. The loss hurt Howard. Yeah, he jumping in here. Looks like the Gold Coast will need to get some more schools with Xavier and Talladega leaving, along with Edward Waters. Yes, they will need to get on that pretty quick. So just wanted to chime in and keep our listeners engaged as we get it. Give us some of that news. What were your biggest news of the day? Chime in there. We said the SWAC, that was up there at the top.
Yeah.
We're going to see what Mike and Charles say. What are their biggest news? Do they agree with you or disagree with you with your top news of the day? So put your top news or top 3, whatever you want to do, either one of them. Let's get engaged. But with that, let's get into it with Jimmy. Jimmy, what you say, Jimmy breaks down the top 10. We only going to do the top 5. We might sneak in some of the ones outside of that once y'all tell me what y'all think of his top 5. And we'll see what's going on. Jimmy breaks it down, overall record, but he also talks about key with him other the number of Division I wins. So I think that's key.
I agree.
Releases it yesterday. So keep that in mind as well, because things are moving fast. But he has it number 5. He has Prairie A&M Panthers. 1 Division I sitting at 1 and 2. They got back into action of having 14 days off. We're playing some good basketball, surprising a lot of people because so much they lose. They've got another player back. They gave him a double-double against Washington State that came out of the box. They had 2 guys sitting out in that loss to Washington State. I wonder if that's playing a role where Jimmy has him ranked at number 5, and I want to hear if you all think that's correct, regardless of who's in who's not. At number 4, he has TSU, Texas Southern University. 1 Division I win, sitting at 2 and 4 on the season, playing quite a few games compared to some folks. Is interesting. Having those, but only one of those 2 wins are against a Division I team. I do want to throw that out there. At number 3, you have North Carolina A&T. North Carolina A&T has played a lot of games. They played
a lot of games.
They played quite a bit.
They played a lot of games. Good competition, mid-majors. Had 3 early wins amongst the loss, but they've kind of went on a losing streak. But they played those games relatively close.
Yeah.
I do want to put that out there to see what you think about that. Norfolk State, 3 Division I wins, sitting at 3-3 on the year, playing some really good basketball, been solid with some key Virginia wins. We talk about Alabama, A&M in terms of what they were able to do in the state with 2 Alabama mid-major or regional schools, I will say it like that, in terms of what's going on, because some people may look at their rankings, whether they're mid-major, low-major, whichever term you want to use. But ding, 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 number 1. Alabama A&M, 2 Division I wins. They had a big win against South Alabama. But think about this. People may not realize about that Alabama win because you were like, hey, they just a regional. Alabama had a winning record. They were sitting at 4-1 when they came in the game or something like that, 5-1. But not only that, they were ranked in the top 25 for mid-major poll rankings, top 20, 25. I think they were at 15, 16, something like that. Help me out there. Which was an extremely solid win, and especially if you had a chance to follow that game. It was not on television. But like I said, in the first half, they put it to them. They were up by 14 with a minute and left. Let them come back. I told you I was going to get a little more than that. With a minute left, they had like a 10, 11-point lead. South Alabama hit a big 3, but still with 34 seconds left, they had a 4-point lead. So it looks like, it got tough in there, kind of got out of their zone with this. But I was good to see young guys, because they're doing this with sophomores. Remember, these were freshmen last year.
Right.
And Jimmy was one of the big folks that they were too young. He said early he liked they were doing it, but it looks like, man, that seasoning, that pounding they took in the sweat may have paid some dividends. We'll have to see in conference play what that may look like. But I think this is a Bulldog team that may be shaking up in Huntsville over there, as they say in the Hill on that side. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like, just to give you some more updates. And so I really want to get in your thoughts in terms of the top 5 teams, in terms of Jimmy's poll. Let me go straight to you, Charles, in terms of that. Let me finish this thought out. Is they won it in double overtime. They were down in the first time, and I thought they would be like, man, we blew it. They came back late and tied it to send in the double overtime and took over and really won it going away in the double overtime, even though it was still a 4-point. They really held on solidly in that double overtime. Kudos for the Bulldogs and coach there as they're getting it done. What are your thoughts on Jimmy, JW, HBCU Division I men's basketball top 10? We gave you the top 5 there. Charles, what do you say?
Alabama A&M, they are a very intriguing team. And like you said, Dr. Gill, I think you hit it on the head in terms of they took their lumps last year as being mostly younger guys, freshmen last year, the baby Bulldogs, as we kind of called them. But they seemingly grown up a little bit coming into this upcoming season.
Fight a little bit now.
Right. Yeah. They're 2-0, but in terms of one thing that I've noticed, and especially when you kind of have a lot of these transfers coming in, it's just it takes a while for those teams to kind of gel early, and you see a lot of high turnover games, things of that nature. So just to watch them, and to see them with these 2 in-state victories, that's huge for Alabama A&M, huge for the conference. It's going to be interesting watching them as they get into conference play, especially when you take on some of these teams that get an opportunity to kind of gel a little bit more and things of that nature, to see if they can kind of carry that momentum going forward.
No doubt about it. They're one of only 3 teams out of all the HBCU programs on the men's side with at least 2 victories. Yeah. I think there's something in and of itself. Let me go to Mike and see his thoughts on Jimmy's top 5. Where is your mind in terms of what are you hearing and see with?
I don't disagree with Alabama A&M just because of the way they're playing. Jalen Johnson, EJ Williams, they're playing some really good ball. The other guy, Tatum, is also playing some really good heads up ball. They're offensive minded. If you look at their stats, I know it's early in the season, but they know how to attack, at least offensively. I don't know if I agree with the North Carolina or the second place pick. Who was it? Was it North Carolina A&T?
No. With 3 Division I wins, just above North Carolina A&T that he had at 3.
Okay, North Carolina A&T. They've played 12, 13 games. They've won 3. And you could argue about the margin of victory. I don't know if they deserve to be in the top 5 yet.
He don't even want him in the top 5, not only at his 3. I
Absolutely.
also give a shout out to Jimmy in regards to Garrett Hicks, point guard, 6-point. A lot of people were giving him a lot of grief because he's the son of the athletic director, but he had a big game. The boy can shoot.
Right.
He put some threes in the game, and he had some big shots in that game, particularly late. So I want to give a special shout out to Garrett Hicks. He's playing some good basketball. Like I said, they're loaded with some sophomores that are putting in work, and they have some freshmen that's sitting out there. But Jameer Brown, sophomore, 6'8" forward, putting in their work. I just told you about Garrett Hicks, guard, 6 foot, sophomore, putting it in there. Jalen Johnson came up big in that game, 6'7" forward, 230.
Yep.
Swag player of the week.
Yep.
Player of the week. Yeah.
Big time. So just wanted to give a shout out to some of those young men getting it done. Cameron Tucker, a guard at 6'1", played big coming out of Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm excited about the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. We just had Coach Pettaway on a couple of weeks ago. So, my wife's from Alabama A&M, just to put it on the table. So I've had a lot of chance to really watch Bulldogs. So I've seen them play flat. To see them look like they're bouncing back, I think it's good for the SWAC. It's going to be fascinating. Boy, you talking about those A&M matchups with Prairie View and Alabama A&M, and now you got FAMU and Alabama A&M, boy. All of them talking about the heels. There's going to be some people, some bragging rights in terms of who's going to be the top of that hill between those 3 teams, just ag schools, if you would. It's going to be fascinating. Go ahead, Charles.
And it's funny because I would argue that Alabama A&M and Prairie View are probably the toughest venues to play in the SWAC because both gyms, the fans are right up on you. So anytime you got those road games where somebody is doing the Texas two-stepper and you get out to Prairie View and, it's rough out there. And then the same thing with Alabama A&M. I think we saw Jackson State's ladies. They were rolling last year, and they had that late loss at Alabama A&M. Dariana Lewis had a phenomenal game against Jackson State. So two of the tougher venues to play in the SWAC.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And over the years, you talking about the distance. You always talk about that Texas two-steps, but part of that is that Alabama roll. When they were rolling, it was hard, and those are like the longest distance. Yeah. And it'll be interesting when you talk adding that Florida trip on the roster. Now it'll be a little different because they'll have a different rotational format that they're looking and figuring out. So that's going to be fascinating in so many ways to see just how that gets done. But now you add on the fact that you got to go to Daytona into that box. And now FAMU, they got a new stadium, which is going to be interesting to see as Alabama A&M is building a new gym. And we've kind of seen how that has been great in terms of recruiting, for example, Grambling, but also it's been a changing dynamic in terms of the intimidation of this smaller venue. So you have some give and take in terms of being able to upgrade your facility, but then they tend to become bigger, which gets away from that matchbox that you talk about. So it's been fascinating to see how that works out in terms of thought process. Let me get right back to AB, and we can do a little comparison and also go back and see what your thoughts in terms of what he did for the top teams. On the men's side of his top 5 program, small and large, broke it down already on the women's side. So I'm going to jump right into it to see what your thoughts and see what AB says in terms of that BCSN poll ranking. Remember, he says that he does this with a program now. So, you always used to get on me with my little program. That's not all that bad. We got some
computer program.
No, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Now, how about that? Small schools. Number 5, Philanda Smith, sitting at 5-5. Jumping up to number 4, you have Everwater sitting at 3-0. Number 3, he goes back to Kansas City roots now. Lincoln, Missouri, sitting at 3-2. And at number 2, you have Lincoln, Pennsylvania, sitting at 3-0. But you have none other than number 1 again, both on the men's and women's side, is Talladega. Sitting at 5-1. So it's interesting to see what's going in there. Let me start with Charles, Mike, because he doesn't seem so enamored. with Talladega being number 1 and 5.
No, you could just make Talladega number 1, both men's and women's, and just be done with it. Everybody else is sitting at 3 and something else.
It's not Talladega. It's everybody else that you like.
It's everybody else. It's Talladega and everybody else right now. Both men's and women's.
Through the years, Talladega's program has always been right there in the mix, if not, winning the conference. So I'm not too shocked whatsoever with them getting out the gates thus far. So,
That's
the Tornadoes.
You have a second-year coach, but they've been able to get good coaches in their program to recruit talented kids to what a lot of people would perceive to be these smaller schools. But they play well. They're right in the mix for top 25 rankings nationally. I think this year Talladega's ranked in the top 25 in the NAIA level. So it gives you some understanding that they're not just ranked number 1 in terms on the men's side, but this is a national team ranking. And then a lot of people would say a national program for that fact. And all our fans that are HBCU sports fans, we do it both Division I and NAIA and Division II in terms of when they're playing. So we like to make sure you get all your latest and greatest in terms of HBCU. So I think your points that you make there, Charles and Mike, in that is right on the point. Let's get the final part in here and let's see if there's any distinction in terms of what Jimmy said for his top 5 and what the BCSN under the leadership of AD is saying. At number 5, he has Prairie View as well, sitting at 1 and 2. At number 4, though, he has Alcorn State sitting at 1 and 1. He has at number 3, Morgan State sitting at 2 and 1. He has number 2, Norfolk State sitting at 3 and 3, but he does have and agrees with Jimmy that Alabama A&M should be number 1 sitting at 2 and 0. I'm gonna go straight to Charles. He's enjoyed that look on his face, so I want to make sure that he gets it out because he has some consternation there. So let us know what's the problem with the BCSN poll ranking this week.
I'm trying to figure out how did Alcorn slip in the top 5 there.
Where did Alcorn come from?
What is it about the computer program that had them in the top 5? I missed that. Not saying they're not a good program, but that is a heck of a coach.
That program is flawed. Where are they in the top 5? I'm sorry.
It's early. I give it to you, AD. I just got to give you a little grief on that. So.
No, I'm not. No, I know. Bring AD on, and I'll ask him personally. Where did Alcorn State?
I'm gonna go to you, Mike. He has Morgan State at number 3, but Jimmy, as we talked about, I said I might bring back in he has Morgan State at number 6, so he has them outside of the top 5, but he has them right there, 2 and 2 overall, 1 Division I win. So I think that's interesting. But Jimmy doesn't even have Alcorn in the top 10, and you know how he thinks about Bussy. So it's interesting that there's some change there. And to your point, you might have some question about A&T. He agrees with you there, though. He doesn't have, and I'll say the BCSN and AD in terms of him contabulating this, is the fact that he doesn't have North Carolina A&T in his top 5 either. So there's some give and take. You're not feeling it, Charles. Let me go to Mike.
I'm gonna say this. Y'all know better than to not have A&T in the top 10. You know that A&T. I don't care if it's Tiddlywinks. A&T gonna be in the top 10. So
I said top 5, but not the top 10 yet. They can be number 8. Okay.
Man, that's cool. Go ahead, Mike. Give me some more of your thoughts.
No, I was trying to look at his model and look at the ranking of it to see how Alcorn State made it in the top 5. I mean, if you look at it, are they even in the top 5 of the SWAC? No, I'll answer that one for you. No. So, so then how did they make it in the top 5 in a poll where you're considering the MEAC as well? So that's my only head scratcher. Other than that, I'm good. I do agree with him on North Carolina A&T being outside the top 5.
Hey, Mike, show your shirt out a little bit, man. I'm proud of that.
Right. You want to see that?
Yeah, there you go. Make sure they can show the love. Yeah,
that's right.
Hey, Charles,
hold on. Let me send some love to Ross College. Let me send some love to Ross College.
There you go. Much love. I see that. It said I'm on the consulting side of this, so we'll bring back. But I like that. With that said,
wait a minute, Doc. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Doc. Alcorn State is 0-4.
Who?
Alcorn State, they were 0-3 or 0-4, right? So I'm wondering what kind of
read off the polls. I wasn't gonna jump in to see what the record was. He might need to check some of his ticket. I don't know if he's going to the website. I don't know what he's using for the record, but we'll check it out.
All right.
So that would make some sense in terms of them not being a poll. They sitting at 0-3. That's what I have, but I just thought I would put it out there and see if one of y'all catch it. But we'll leave that a little later. In terms of the big news of the day, what are your big news? Tyler says, I agree. I have seen both play, and they would be a handful for both the CIAA and SIAC in terms of Alcorn State top 5, number 5. Jimmy says Alcorn State is not top 5. So, Charles, you got another person that's teaming in on you as well as you might. But what is a couple of news of the day? Before you give me your top news, give me some other top news that you're saying. I don't want you to give me your top one yet. We got a little time. We got about 8 minutes left.
We're talking news of the week?
Huh? No, I'm talking about of the year. This is your 12th.
Oh, year.
Sure. Oh, the year. Oh,
okay. Year. What was some top big news that stood out to you this year? I don't want you to give me your top news, your number one.
Okay.
You start somewhere else. So I'm going to go to you, Mike. What was some big news that you said in your year review? What was big news and why would you say it was big?
Okay. It wasn't my top, but the FAMU Bethune leaving the MEAC to go to the SWAC was big for me. It wasn't my top, but it was big because it's significant. It changed the landscape of Black college football. It made the SWAC,
Black college athletics.
Yes, it made the SWAC a pseudo power, more of a power conference than it already was. It has increased the vantage of Black college sport. It's changed the landscape, as you say, CB, of college football altogether. And I think that move has reverberating effects, not only this year, but next year and the years to come. I think it will allow some renewed rivalries that people will capitalize off of, that people have been wanting to see, that will now be done within conference. And I think it has basically the timing of it, and combined with the social movement that we see in America, folks, gravitating more toward HBCUs. Now you see FAMU, Bethune coming to the Southwest Athletic Conference. I think all of these have happened in one big continuum that's gaining momentum. And I think for that to happen in 2020, in June of the year our Lord, 2020, and the year where we've had so much social movement and upheaval, and a year where the SWAC arguably has now become more of the earning potential, the marketing potential has increased by a magnitude of 10 to 20. I think that move is huge. And it's not it's not the biggest, but it's up there with me and my fave 5. So
no problem.
Sure.
Good with that. Let me drop this on you, Mike Washington. We're going to show you what tailgating is if you make your way down to Miami in September.
Who knows? Whatever.
You got Michael D. Jones says Charles going to hate on the Braves.
No, hold on. I said that's a good program. Orlando Buss, a great coach. I'm not sure.
With that, Charles, sticking to the topic. That's my fault. I got y'all off and disengaged.
Yeah.
Give me not your top news of the year. Give me another news story of the year. And let's keep this about 30, 40 seconds because I want to get a couple of them in before I give you your top.
Undoubtedly, I think Mike touched on it in terms, and not just Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, but North Carolina A&T. They also were leaving the MEAC as well. But beyond that, undoubtedly, Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime coming to Jackson State, the global brand that he is coming to coach in this conference, that's going to be huge over the next however long he is coaching at Jackson State. You take a look at what he's been able to do already from a social media standpoint. He has completely changed the game. I think that's going to be huge. We'll see what they do on the field, but his first recruiting class, it turned everybody's heads.
My goodness.
In terms of the guys that he was able to bring in. So that definitively, I think, is one of the bigger news stories that has happened over 2020.
Apex Predator.
Apex Predator is Jackson State University.
I'll leave it right
yes,
there.
Sir.
On that.
Hey, if you want to know what Apex Predator is, tune in to the Tiger Talk and Dr. Cavil as he laid into that so perfectly on the Tiger Talk podcast this past week. But Jackson State University, as he so eloquently put it, right now is an Apex Predator.
No
Apex Predator. Oh my goodness.
With that, I like the way you snuck that in there. That was pretty good. You talked about A&T leaving, but you got 2 at 1. That was pretty smooth. Jackson State, I was a little surprised. I want to hear your number 1 now. I wasn't sure if you may have that number 1. Let me go with Mike and let him get one more in since you got 2 in that plug. That was pretty smooth.
Yeah, he snuck that second one in. Yeah.
Back to you to get your number 1. We'll end it with Mike. Get this number 1. So, Mike, if you would, we got about 3 minutes. Keep it kind of short, but give me some other news, and I'm going to tell somebody's on here that gave me a top 5, and then I want to come back to each of you on your top news of the year. So give me a number. It's not your top, but you have up there in one of your top 5 areas.
The impact of COVID-19 on the spring seasons, especially, we're on the cuff of the basketball tournaments, and some people were en route or at their arenas, and all of a sudden, here comes the announcement, boom, no tournament. And that then kind of trickled into other events in the spring. Stuff just got canceled. I just thought that was a significant impact in the midst of everything else that's happened. I thought that was big.
Yeah, I remember that, Mike, because you were planning to come in a day after Charles and I, and we had the same flights out, and we were going in a day early like we customly do to set up. And we literally on the phone that evening. Charles was like, "What you think?" And I like, "Charles, it's not looking good." And he said, "Well, let's play it by ear." But yeah, I remember vividly that night. Before I go back to you, Charles, for your number 1, I want to jump in here. Kendrick Callis says his top 5. He agreed with you as one of his top 5. 2 of his top 5 he has on there. We don't know what your number 1 is, but he had number 5, SWAC expansion with FAMU and DCU. At number 4, he had Deion Sanders, Coach Brown's hire at Jackson State. At number 3, he had Texas Southern great Winston Hill elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. At number 2, he had football moving to the spring. That was a big one. At number 1, SWAC basketball tourney cancellation. He had number 1. You all talked about that. So he's right in line with a lot of you, but I cannot wait now to Charles. What is your number 1 year in review that really stands out to you for 2020?
Undoubtedly, the pandemic that has been life-altering for all of us. Prior to March 11th, we were going into the studio doing the show and look at how the world has changed since I think it was the night Rudy Gobert for the Utah Jazz tested positive for COVID. And it seemed like it was a complete trickle-down effect from that night to when the NBA shut down. And it seemed as though there was a crescendo that happened all across sports. So I would definitively say the pandemic has been life-altering for not just sports, but for humanity. So that I don't know if it gets any bigger than that.
Very true. Mike, what was your top?
My top, and I flip-flopped a little bit. I said the pandemic and the basketball tournament. My number 1, for a number of reasons, is actually Deion being announced as Jackson State. That was my number 1. I understand the pandemic, but if you look at the impact that Deion coming to Jackson State and the marketing, and they have literally changed and elevated this game. It's had financial impacts. It's having impacts on other sports, on other schools in the SWAC. Even what we call novice fans are asking, "Hey, what's up with this Deion move? What's Prairie View gonna do? What's Alabama A&M? What's Southern gonna do?" You have folks that are not, day-to-day grassroots fans now outside of it. What I call novice fans now asking, and he has really galvanized this. And I think that announcement has just been huge. It's been ongoing. The snowball impact has continued to increase. So to me, that was my number one. I know it happened at that little school in Jackson. It's okay. But I mean, you know, sometimes we got to give others a little bit of shine.
I'm glad you said it. You know, I didn't want to be a homer on that.
Let me give some kudos out there before we close up. Rusty says the sports shutdown, COVID-19, HBCU key recruits in addition to the SWAC. Jimmy says preach. Mike Washington. Roy says FAMU and VCU to the SWAC is the biggest HBCU story event of the year. Roger Holmes, I like this. This is what a professor would say. Dr. Holmes says SWAC rolling out esports.
I like that.
Top three stories is FAMU and Bethune-Cookman leaving MEAC for the SWAC. Thomas Snacks Lee winning ESPY award. That was a big one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Number one, Deion Sanders to JSU. I like that. Willie says number one story, COVID-19 cancellation of sports. Jimmy says COVID-19, SWAC expansion, North Carolina A&T leaving the MEAC. APR suspended for 2020. That's another good one that you put in there. Ricky Burton says Alcorn moving to the West, Grambling, Alcorn, Southern, and PV. Great one. That's another one that was big. Lana Shaw says, thank you about COVID, the number one change for the whole dynamic of HBCU sports. Yes, no doubt about it. Good point. Demetria Glenn, Cornell Maynard isn't worried about what's going on with the change with Alcorn leaving. I like that. Shout out to the book. Make sure you get the Bulldogs in there. The SWAC West with the Alcorn State move in football just got very interesting, no doubt. A very good offensive mind coach in terms of Cornell Maynard, no doubt about it. Russ says, stop it, Mike Washington, laugh at that. So
I'm not going to stop.
In all seriousness, enjoy your holidays. Be safe. Continue to mask up, safe distances. And when time comes, the show that I put out there, you can go check out my interview with a medical doctor researcher at Meharry Medical College on Block Sports. I'll put it in the archives for you. See it. That's Block. You can check it out. block.l.o.c.k.sports. You can check it out at an interview that I think is very informative. So I ask you to let me know your thoughts in terms of how I did with the interview and questions I brought up in terms of the vaccination and or what's going forward. But no matter where you are, enjoy your family, whatever you have to do, social distance, get on the Zoom, make the calls. If you can't be there with them, find a way to reach out and touch somebody, even if it's virtually. We have much love for all the support you did for us. We cannot do it. We'll have a nice surprise for you right after Christmas before we literally close up the year. We'll bring up the guest from 1876 Sports and Culture. We'll do a little mix in terms of what that looks like. We'll see if we can get that going. We might sneak that into the first of the year as they start coming up. But we'll have some more mix for you next week to let you know what's going on. So keep in tune as we start to hit 100 episodes with our new format, working with BCSN Jericho Network. We're proud of that partnership with the great work that's going on with Roy. Continue to check us out. Thomas White is still checking us out. HBCU grad is vice president-elect.
Huge.
That was a big.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sports related, but it is HBCU related with President-elect Kamala Harris. So did want to get a shout out there for the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Big news there. So thanks for everybody again. Thank you for listening Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike. Make sure that you share our podcast with your friends and our colleagues. Look for us to start transitioning over to YouTube. We're going to make that move. Look for us to add another show as we get into the new year. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Hope you enjoyed our year-end review and the updates of HBCU Sports as we continue to push forward. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday right here at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab as we mix it up with each and every one of you all. Continue to be safe. Stay safe. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. Again, that's KENYATTACAVIL. You can also catch us on Twitter at Inside HBCU Sports Lab 1. Inside HBCU Sports Lab 1. Go to YouTube and subscribe. Even if you don't get a chance to check us out and then you catch us live, go and subscribe. It really will help us in terms of what we're doing on YouTube. Go check us out on and download the app, BCSN, so we can get the latest and greatest there. Follow us because we got a lot of big things that we will continue to do for you. With that, dream big. We'll continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Mike.
Course.
Charles.
Lecture.
Dismiss.